Hello and welcome to the CX Files for 14th November 2024. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal. Mark, great to catch up with you.
Cool, good to see you. Looking good there, looking like it's winter is really setting in Canada.
It is, no surprise. Look, we are facing our November. We've had a bit of a warm autumn so far, but certainly, there's just no getting around the fact that winter will be on its way, and we're certainly starting to feel a little bit of the chilling in the bones, shall we say, or so to speak.
Yeah, well, we have rain. I don't know if the listeners can hear the rain on my office window, but thing about Brazil in summer is you get all these tropical downpours. And so the best time, if you actually want to enjoy the beach, is the spring or the autumn, because once it gets really hot in the summer, then it seems as if the pressure builds up and then the sky explodes in the afternoon.
Yeah, having been in Brazil and having seen some of the weather, it's amazing how things can change from bright and sunny to rainy and windy in literally just a heartbeat.
Okay, so why don't we go to the interview that we've got lined up for this week? And I know that this was a conversation that you had recently with John Dinardo.
Yeah, John Dinardo, Mark, is a great guy. He is the CEO and president of Nordia. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with Nordia, it is the largest BPO operator in Canada, independent Canadian-owned BPO operator. For quite some time, Nordia had been a division of Bell Canada that exclusively focused on Bell as a client. But things have changed, and one of the exciting elements around Nordia is the fact that the company has decided to progress and look towards a broader range of clients and a broader series of different sectors. John is also unique in the fact that I think he is the first person who I've spoken to who is not only based in Montreal, but literally a stone's throw from where I live. So we were joking around in the podcast about geographically is probably the closest guest I've ever had in my time co-hosting this podcast with you. But it was really interesting to catch up and find out about a true Canadian BPO success story and the direction that he seems to want to take the Nordia the Nordia organization and really expand not just this reach in terms of potential clients, but also the services and functions that they provide.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because recently someone from Teleperformance Portugal actually visited Brazil and suggested that we meet up to have a chat and a beer. And when he told me where he wanted to meet, I said, that's exactly the same block that I used to live in. So it's, again, funny how these meetings end up so close to home.
It really can be. And I think that it also speaks to the breadth of our industry. You always associate working with a BPO that's going to be on the other side of the world. And here I've got one literally on the other side of the bridge. So the chat with John was great. John also filled us in a little bit at the end of our chat, Mark. And he's in a very unique position to do this on what are some of the nuances and some of the trickiness of navigating the French-speaking Canadian market. Now, as many people will know, I live in the French-speaking part of Canada. It's a very distinct part of the country. Consumers have a very distinct approach in terms of how they interact with businesses, whether they are buying a service or a product. And John was uniquely positioned to give us some insight in terms of what that looks like and what some of the elements for success are, whether it's on the captive CX side or the BPO side.
Okay, sounds good. So why don't we go straight to your conversation with John Donato?
The CX Files is very fortunate to welcome a rarity today, a guest from Canada. Now, as everybody in the listening audience knows, I am Canadian myself, and I love to bring on my fellow countrymen and countrywomen to chat a little bit about what's going on in the world of CX. But this is very special for me because my guest today is John DiNardo, who joins me from his offices in Laval. John is the president and CEO of Nordia. And John, I think in all my time doing this podcast, you're probably geographically the closest guest I've ever had because literally as the crow flies, we're maybe 10 minutes away from each other.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. We're based out of Laval, and I guess you're in Montreal, so very close. So thank you, Peter, for having me on the show today.
Oh, no, it's me who thanks you. And it's great to catch up with you because there's been a lot of changes that have been going forward at Nordia the last little while. And that's really what we want to get into. That's really the crux of our discussion today for the CX files. Probably a good starting point, John, would be to get a sense about Nordia, who Nordia is, or in this case, what Nordia is, the history of Nordia, and what capabilities that you bring to the table.
Oh, cool. Thanks. So yeah, so Nordia got created in 1999. So we're the largest BPO customer experience call center right now in Canada. Was created in 1999 by Bell Canada and Excel Communications to do outsourcing work. At that time, we were around 1,200 agents. And in 2013, 2014, we expanded went from 5 locations to 12 locations in 18 months, went from 1,200 employees to 4,000 employees across Canada. That expansion was in the province of Quebec, Ontario, New Brunswick, and BC. So big expansion at that point. Then the other big points is in 2020, like everybody else, COVID hit. So we became basically a virtual employer. So 80% of our reps, our CX reps, were working in a virtual way at home. So we had to adapt. And then in 2022, we acquired a company in the Philippines called Quantrix. So a tech-driven CX BPO with technology-driven people to help us in our offering across the country. So basically, our positioning, Peter, is simply we are the largest Canadian company that have capabilities worldwide to support Canadians. We understand the Canadian business model. We understand how Canadians think. We also have a very big presence in the province of Quebec. So as we know, Quebec is slightly different than the other provinces in Canada. And Quebec folks like to be served in French by French Québécois pure. So that's a big offering that we have. So our goal is really to become, to be Canada's go-to person for people who operate in Canada, so we understand how people think in Canada, and also for companies abroad who want to come and do business in Canada and need support with CX technology to operate locally in the province and the country.
That's a great overview, John. Now, the reality is when we caught up a few months ago here in Montreal, when yourself and some of the representatives from Nordia and myself had the chance to meet up, there was a talk about a strategic direction. Can you talk a little bit about how Nordia is evolving? What was the direction that you were taking before, and what has prompted the pivot? What will the pivot look like as we move into 2025?
Yeah, so we were mainly concentrated on Canada's biggest brands, Canada Post, Bell Canada, Ministry of Ontario. We were focused on those customers. And after, all the knowledge that we have digitally and with the CX experience that we gathered over the years, we decided to open up business to a lot more companies and partners around the world that want to do business in Canada. So basically, now we are starting to compete and looking for new business across the country and elsewhere in the world to help Canadians work in Canada and operate in Canada while continuing to protect their brand and the recognition. So basically, we opened up our business model to other partners across the country. And I think it's long overdue that there's no longer any large Canadian BPO that can help Canadians. It's often if you want to, depending on what you want to do, most of these big companies moved out of the country. So I think with our experience, our knowledge, our presence around the country, everywhere, including our French Québécois, we're in a great position to help other companies.
Yeah, and I think that that's a wise move because one of the things that we've been picking up on, John, in terms of the research we've been doing at Ryan Strategic Advisory, has been that the pie is growing. There are a lot of new clients out there. There's a lot of potential new clients coming from the medium-sized enterprises, coming from perhaps even the startup community. And as far as I'm concerned, looking for opportunities when it comes beyond some of the big whales, some of the big beasts that we do have in Canada. And let's be frank, I think enterprises in this country have probably accounted for maybe 25 to 30 that all the outsourcers have been chasing at the same time. That's had a negative impact in terms of the ability to drive margin. Everything is very price driven historically in Canada. So reaching out to a new to almost a new slate of prospective clients coming from different sectors, perhaps rapidly growing firms that maybe aren't at that big beast, big whale level yet, certainly provides a lot of diversification for a company like Nordia.
Yes, for sure. And the landscape is changing, as you know. So there's a lot more. If we talk to CEOs in Canada or elsewhere in the world, what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for CX is evolving. So they're looking for technology for their customers to be able to interact with them in the way the customers want. Technology, voice, so on and so forth. They also want tools and technology to help their employees be able to answer the customer's needs and when the customer talks to them. So they need technology to help them navigate through all these different touch points. They also want cost savings to a certain extent, and they need technology to better manage their environment, their operational environment. So putting that all together in today's world, it becomes very challenging for a small company that wants to start up is to use how do you integrate the technology with the human side to be able to be competitive and protect your brand. And I think that's the big change in the industry right now. Before it's more human side, now it's technology, and it could be very overwhelming for new companies or smaller companies to get into. And that's where we want to play a bigger role, is helping companies achieve brand protection, growth of their products, and also offer great customer service, because it is, still a competitive advantage in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, and I think the technology plays a lot into it. And when you get a lot of these brands that are looking to, as you say, to protect their own image and to make sure that they're driving loyalty amongst the end users, technology is going to play a huge role in that moving forward. But the reality is, for so many of these firms, it's not as simple as just going out and procuring the technology or the know-how how to run the technology. That's where a company like Nordia, with the skill sets that you have developed over the course of the past 20 plus years, that really brings a lot to the table in terms of the functionality that these firms can leverage.
For sure. And it's all about, to your point, it's all about the integration of the technology and the human touch. And how do you balance that in the proper way? So how do you help companies dictate their customer service model, help them achieve the right shoring with the right cost? Where do you put the volume? What call type? And the life of an agent also is changing a lot, because a lot of the easy stuff now is resolved by self-serve and technology. But when a customer wants to join or wants to talk to a live person, often the call is more complex. You need a little bit more empathy, and you have to have the ability to resolve the customer's issue when you're talking to him, because he used all the rest of the technology that's available. And in order to do so, that rep has to be equipped with the proper tools so he understands exactly what the customer is trying to do and trying to accomplish if he wants to help them. Now, you put all that together, and it comes out a little bit more like, almost call center as a service. So you're a company and you want to say, listen, I need to build a customer operation model, technology, voice, all that. So how can I go in the new catchy phrase is I really want to pay for a call center as a service, as a total service. And I think that's where we're headed. And in our way, we use so many technologies. We handle 20 million interactions a year. We have lots of experience around that. And I think that's where we can bring a big value to people, to companies who want to do business in Canada.
So Nordia, John, correct me if I'm wrong, is celebrating an anniversary around now. And
Yep.
I would love to know, first of all, what is the anniversary? How many years?
25 years. So 25 years.
25 years, yeah.
This year. Yeah.
That's what I thought. 25 years, 1999. My math is good today. So, John, what do you see in those 25 years, during that quarter century period? What are the company's key achievements? What would you list as the 2 to 3 main accomplishments that Nordia has been able to bring to the table?
I think one thing that we've been talking about since the beginning is in order to deliver good customer experience from day one, which was all voice, and today, I think there's what we used to call our secret sauce is you need to have employee satisfaction and very low employee turnover at the basis of everything in order to be able to provide good customer experience to your partners. If you rotate and you have high turnover, it's very difficult to provide good customer service in the call center history of the past. So we always, we're proud to say that it's the last 10 years, our net promoter score has been above 80%. We have the lowest customer employee attrition in the industry by far, which enables us to deliver high quality customer service. And when I look at the 25 past years and where we're going today, it's becoming more and more important, these two criteria, because the rep's job of today, the voice, the live voice, is a lot more complex than the past. So if you don't have those two key areas of low attrition and a good employee sat to represent the companies, combined with all of the technology that goes with it, it's going to be very hard to succeed. So I think what we've bringing to the table is high-end customer service for an outsourcer model, for a BPO, with very high technology availability, onshore, offshore. So we have the full suite of services. And I don't want to forget, we have also the French Québécois, which is a very important factor to do business in Canada. So I think those things combined in the 25 years of knowledge, and plus all the rest that we knew and grew with time, our knowledge has increased. We also served, big iconic brands in Canada that have changed and grown with time technology-wise. So we have lots of knowledge and have lots to offer different people. So that's, I would say, in the roadmap of the 25 years that we're proud of, is the evolution of how we delivered a customer service that's different. So we position ourselves, you have the standard BPO, you have the captive centers, the big companies. We always position ourselves somewhere in the middle, a hybrid type outsourcing. So why, if you're going to outsource, how can you outsource by protecting your brand, increase your revenues? Don't necessarily go always for lowest cost. So we always use that model, and it's becoming more and more important today, in today's world, because when a customer calls, it's often an important call and very much more complex, and we have that quality of reps in our ecosystem.
All right, so you've touched on something a couple of times, and I want to finish off our chat here, John, because it's been fantastic, and getting the deep dive on Nordia, finding out where the company is going has been wonderful. But you're in a unique position to answer a question that I have been wondering about for quite some time. You've alluded to the fact that Nordia does have the experience servicing the French market, or specifically the Quebec market. Having lived in Montreal now for 25 years, I'm very aware of the need for good quality French language service in Canada. My go-to whenever I telephone a contact center in the country is I always hit 2 for French, because I find that I get served a lot faster. And it's not that I'm served better, but just faster. But there are a lot of nuances when you're servicing between the French language consumer and the Anglophone consumer from potentially the other 9 provinces. What would you say would be the key differences that an enterprise needs to think about when it's looking at navigating the 2 so-called solitudes, as it's been put historically in Canada, from a consumer support perspective?
Well, I think that Quebecers or Quebecois, what they're looking for, they feel different, right? They're a different entity. And I think they respect a lot. They want to do business with French Canadian companies, or at least get well served by a French Canadian person. So I think the difference is that, on an English call, you could be anywhere in the province of Canada, let's say, and it's pretty much happy to be served in Canada and happy to be served by a Canadian. But I think you'll gain a lot more points if you answer the phone and you want to service the Quebec market, and they're speaking to somebody from the province, especially in the rural areas like a Saguenay, a Quebec City, a Sherbrooke City. You'll gain a lot of momentum with your brand and brand recognition, and I think a great competitive advantage. At one point, we used to, when we were all over the province, and we used to, for one customer, the employee would answer, "Hi, my name is John, and I'm answering you from Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean or from Chicoutimi," in French. And that would, right off the start, that would create empathy, a communication with the person. And that when they hang up off that call, I could tell you that whoever that company is represented by that rep in the province of Quebec will earn some very positive points to do business in Quebec. And I think that's the main difference of the province. You know it as well as me, how surprised people will get when somebody says, "Hi, I'm answering from Rouyn-Noranda. How can I help you?" That's a wow factor, right?
Yeah.
And that's a wow factor where I think can make a difference. And that goes for any company. You can take a big American player that's doing business in Quebec and puts his call center, and when the person hits 2, he's answered by somebody in the province. That's a lot of points. Now, again, I know there's affordability things, but that's where we come into play, where we can help with the right shoring, the right call placement, what calls go where. And you can think of lots of different models. Montreal as a more diversified city, you have more flexibility. Different postal codes, you might want to move calls at a different location, so on and so forth. So I think this is all call it the consulting services that we can offer also to help doing business in this country to anybody.
Okay, well, John Dinardo, thank you very much. It is great to catch up with you. I'm actually feeling a bit stupid now that I didn't come over to the offices to do this, considering that literally it's about 4 metro stops up from where I live. But that'll be for the next podcast, I think.
You're more than welcome anytime. Thank you very much for having us.
It's wonderful to have you. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.